We often believe that speaking up shows confidence, that silence means surrender. But that's not true. There are moments when silence protects your peace, saves your relationships, and even defines your character. As the saying goes, don't speak unless you can improve the silence. So, let's uncover those moments when silence becomes your greatest power. When you're angry, silence becomes your greatest form of strength. Anger is a natural emotion. It rises like a storm, sudden and wild, demanding to be heard. In those heated moments, our minds are clouded, our hearts race, and our words sharpen into weapons. We often feel the urge to speak, to defend ourselves, to prove our point, or to make someone feel the same pain we're feeling. But what we don't realize is that words spoken in anger are like arrows shot in haste. Once they leave your mouth, you can never pull them back. Many relationships have been broken not because of truth, but because of the tone and timing of our words. When anger controls our tongue, we lose control of our wisdom. We say things we don't mean, we exaggerate, we accuse, we hurt. And later, even if we apologize, the scar remains. You may forget what you said, but the person who heard it never will. Silence in that moment of anger is not weakness. It is power under control. It takes far more courage to remain calm than to shout. When you stay silent in anger, you give yourself a sacred pause, a moment to breathe, to think, to let emotions settle. Silence doesn't mean you agree or accept what's wrong. It means you are wise enough to wait until your heart is steady and your words can heal instead of harm. Think about it. How many times have you regretted what you said in anger, but never regretted staying silent? When you choose silence, you protect your peace, your dignity, and your relationships. You stop feeding the fire and start controlling it. Silence allows you to listen to your own thoughts and understand what truly hurt you, rather than reacting to the surface of the situation. In silence, you can turn your anger into understanding, your frustration into patience, and your pain into wisdom. Remember, silence is not the absence of response. It's the presence of self-control. When anger knocks, let silence answer the door. When you don't have all the facts, silence becomes a shield that protects your reputation, your relationships, and your integrity. Too often, people rush to speak, to judge, to assume, without truly understanding what is happening. We live in a world that rewards quick opinions, where everyone wants to be the first to comment, the first to react, the first to share their side of the story. But when you speak without knowing the full truth, you risk spreading lies, misunderstanding others, and losing the trust that takes years to build. There is incredible wisdom in holding your tongue until you know the whole picture. Imagine a situation where you hear a rumor about someone, maybe a friend, a coworker, or a classmate. The story sounds convincing, your emotions rise, and your first instinct is to respond. But what if what you heard was only half true? What if the missing piece changes everything? Words spoken without complete knowledge can destroy reputations, break hearts, and create conflicts that never needed to exist. Once your words are out, they can travel far beyond your control. You can't chase them back. You can't undo the damage they cause. Silence in such moments is not ignorance, it is maturity. It shows that you value truth more than gossip, understanding more than reaction. Staying quiet gives you time to listen, to observe, and to gather the missing pieces. It gives you the patience to think before you speak and the wisdom to choose your words carefully. When you are silent, you allow reality to unfold naturally instead of shaping it through your assumptions. There's a quiet strength in saying, I don't know enough to speak about this yet. It's a mark of intelligence and integrity to withhold judgment until you have clarity. People who rush to talk often find themselves correcting their words later, while those who stay silent appear calm, wise, and trustworthy. In life, you don't always need to have an opinion about everything. Sometimes, silence speaks of discipline, the kind that earns you respect and credibility. Remember this, a few moments of silence can save you from years of embarrassment or regret. The world may expect instant reactions, but wise people choose thoughtful responses. When you don't have all the facts, don't fill the silence with noise. Fill it with observation, reflection, and understanding, because silence in that moment is not emptiness, it's intelligence waiting to be expressed at the right time. When someone else is speaking, silence becomes a form of respect, a language of understanding that goes beyond words. In today's world, everyone wants to be heard, but very few are truly willing to listen. We are often so focused on preparing our reply that we forget to absorb what the other person is saying. We interrupt, we argue, we finish their sentences, or we start forming opinions before they even finish their thought. But real communication is not a competition of voices. It's a balance between speaking and listening. When you stay silent while someone else speaks, you give them something precious, your attention. You tell them, without words, I want to voice matters. I want to understand you. And that is one of the deepest forms of human connection. People don't just need someone to talk to, they need someone to listen, truly listen, not just wait for their turn to respond. Listening in silence builds trust. It allows people to open up, to feel safe, and to express what they truly feel. When you interrupt or rush to reply, you close that door. But when you stay silent and present, you open a space for honesty and connection. Silence in listening is not passive, it is active and powerful. It requires patience, empathy, and humility. It means setting your ego aside, silencing your thoughts for a moment, and giving full focus to the other person's words, tone, and emotions. Sometimes, the most meaningful part of a conversation isn't the words you speak. It's the silence you hold that allows the other person to be heard completely. There is a saying, when you talk, you repeat what you already know. When you listen, you might learn something new. That's the essence of wisdom. By remaining silent while others speak, you give yourself the gift of understanding. You learn new perspectives, new truths, and new lessons that speaking too soon would have hidden from you. In silence, you observe more, the expressions, the pauses, the feelings behind the words. You begin to hear not just the voice, but the heart behind it. And silence doesn't mean agreement, it means respect. You can disagree with someone without interrupting them. You can listen to understand, not to react. When you allow others to finish, you show them that their thoughts are valuable, even if you don't share the same view. This kind of silence creates peace instead of tension, bridges instead of walls. Think about the greatest leaders, teachers, and friends. They all have one thing in common: they listen more than they speak. Their silence doesn't make them weak, it makes them wise. Because silence in conversation is like fertile ground, it allows understanding to grow. So, when someone else is speaking, let your silence be your strength. Listen not just with your ears, but with your heart. Because sometimes the most powerful response you can give is simply your quiet presence. When emotions are high, silence becomes the anchor that keeps you steady in the storm. There are moments in life when feelings rise like waves: anger, sadness, fear, jealousy, or disappointment. And in those moments, we often lose control of what we say. Our emotions speak louder than our reason, and we react instead of responding. We slam doors, raise our voices, and say things we don't truly mean. But after the storm settles, after the anger cools, we often look back and wish we had remained silent. Because silence, in times of emotional chaos, is not weakness, it is wisdom that protects both your peace and your dignity. When emotions are high, the mind is clouded. It cannot see clearly or think logically. Speaking in that state is like trying to paint during an earthquake. Everything comes out messy and broken. Words spoken during emotional turmoil have a sharp edge. They can cut deeper than intended. You may win the argument, but lose the person. You may express your pain, but in a way that causes more hurt than healing. Silence in that moment gives you space to breathe, to process, to let the intensity pass before you decide what truly needs to be said. The best thing you can do when emotions take over is to pause. Walk away if you must. Take a deep breath. Let your silence speak for you until your heart finds balance again. Because silence doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough not to say something that could damage what you value. It means you understand that timing matters as much as truth. There's a right time to express your feelings, and that time is not when emotions are at their peak. In silence, you can listen to yourself. You begin to hear your true thoughts beneath the noise of frustration. You start to separate what is real from what is temporary. Silence allows you to cool the fire of emotion and gain the clarity you need to respond with grace instead of impulse. It gives you the power to turn pain into perspective and reaction into reflection. Imagine if more people practiced this. If, instead of shouting back, they stayed silent for a moment. If, instead of arguing, they paused and breathed. So many conflicts would end before they begin. So many relationships would be saved from unnecessary words. Silence can be the bridge between misunderstanding and peace. It can turn tension into understanding and anger into compassion. There is a deep strength in being calm when everyone else is losing control. The person who stays silent in emotional moments is not emotionless. They are emotionally intelligent. They know that silence doesn't hide emotions, it manages them. It allows healing instead of harm. When you choose silence in heated moments, you choose wisdom over impulse, peace over pride, and understanding over chaos. Remember, silence doesn't mean you're avoiding the issue. It means you're preparing to handle it with clarity and care. It means you're giving yourself the grace to think before you speak, to respond rather than react. So the next time emotions run high, let silence be your strength. Let it calm the storm within you before you try to calm the world around you. When others gossip, silence becomes a sign of character, dignity, and strength. Gossip is like a slow poison that spreads quietly but destroys deeply. It begins as a whisper, often disguised as harmless talk, but it can tear down reputations, friendships, and trust faster than any open conflict ever could. When you hear others talking about someone who isn't there to defend themselves, you are standing at a crossroad. One path leads to joining the noise, and the other leads to choosing silence and walking away with integrity. The choice you make in that moment defines who you are far more than any words you could say. It's easy to get drawn into gossip because it makes us feel included, powerful, or entertained. We feel like we're in the loop, that we know something others don't. But gossip is an illusion of connection built on the pain of someone else. The person who gossips to you today will likely gossip about you tomorrow. Participating in it may make you feel relevant for a moment, but it slowly weakens your reputation and your sense of self-respect. People may laugh with you, but they will never truly trust you. Silence in the face of gossip is not ignorance, it's wisdom. It's the quiet decision to protect your peace and the dignity of others. When you refuse to speak ill of someone behind their back, you are telling the world that your integrity is not for sale. You are showing that you value truth and respect over drama and attention. Your silence says, I would not be part of tearing someone down. And that kind of silence speaks volumes about your character. Choosing silence doesn't mean you support what's being said, it means you refuse to add to the harm. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do when others gossip is to change the subject, to walk away, or simply not respond. You don't need to correct every lie or confront every rumor. Your silence, your refusal to engage, sends a louder message than any defense ever could. It says that you are not interested in negativity, that you rise above it. When you stay silent instead of gossiping, you build invisible walls that protect your relationships and your peace. You start to attract people who value honesty, kindness, and respect. Silence keeps your energy clean. It frees you from the weight of negativity. You stop feeding the cycle of hurt that gossip creates and instead become a quiet force of goodness in a world that often forgets the power of kindness. There's another truth. Gossip rarely ends with words. It always leads to consequences. The things said in secret eventually reach the ears they were meant to harm, and when they do, the trust that breaks can never be fully restored. Silence prevents you from being a part of that destruction. It saves you from regret, from guilt, and from the emptiness that comes when you realize your words hurt someone who did not deserve it. It takes real strength to stay quiet when others are busy talking. It takes discipline to listen and walk away instead of joining in. But that strength, that discipline, is what separates the wise from the careless. A wise person knows that what you say about others says more about you than it does about them. So, when others gossip, let your silence be your armor. Let it protect your peace, your dignity, and your truth. Because silence, in that moment, is not the absence of speech. It is the presence of self-control, the echo of maturity, and the mark of a person who chooses grace over gossip every single time. When your words have the power to hurt someone, silence becomes an act of kindness and maturity. There are moments when truth burns on your tongue, ready to escape, moments when you feel you must speak to prove a point, to correct someone, or to express frustration. But not every truth needs to be spoken, and not every opinion needs to be heard. Sometimes, the way we say something hurts more than what we say, and once spoken, hurtful words cannot be taken back. They echo in the hearts of others long after we forget them. That is why silence, in such moments, is not weakness. It is compassion guided by wisdom. It's easy to speak when emotions are high, when someone has wronged you, or when you feel you are right. But speaking without sensitivity can wound people in ways you may never see. Words are powerful. They can heal, inspire, and build, but they can also cut, destroy, and scar. Silence, when your words could cause harm, shows that you understand the value of peace over pride. It means you've learned that not every battle needs a response, and not every situation requires your voice. Sometimes, silence is the only way to protect both yourself and the person you might unintentionally hurt. Think about how many times people have said something cruel in the name of honesty. They might say, "I'm just being real," or "I'm just telling the truth." But honesty without kindness is cruelty disguised as virtue. True wisdom is not in saying everything that is true, it is in knowing when and how to say it, or whether to say it at all. Silence gives you the time to think. Will my words heal or will they harm? Will they bring peace or create pain? If your answer leans toward harm, then silence is the higher choice. There's a quiet strength in holding your tongue when you could easily win an argument or prove your point. That restraint shows emotional intelligence. It shows that you value harmony more than ego. People often remember how you made them feel, not how right you were. Choosing silence protects your relationships and your inner peace. It stops the chain of hurt before it begins. Sometimes, it even teaches others by example, showing them that calm dignity is more powerful than loud defense. Silence doesn't mean you are avoiding the truth. It means you are choosing the right moment and the right words to express it. There's a time for everything, a time to speak and a time to stay silent. When your words are sharp with anger or coated with judgment, that is the time for silence. Later, when your heart is calm and your intentions are pure, your words will have far more impact. A gentle truth spoken at the right time can open hearts. A harsh truth spoken in the wrong moment can close them forever. We must remember that silence has a language of its own. It can say, "I disagree, but I respect you." It can say, "I could hurt you with my words, but I choose not to." It can say, "Peace matters more to me than being right." That kind of silence builds character. It transforms you into someone who leads with wisdom, empathy, and grace. In a world where everyone rushes to speak, the one who knows when to stay silent shines with quiet strength. It takes courage to hold back words that could satisfy your ego but destroy someone else's peace. So, when your words have the power to hurt, choose silence. Let it be your way of showing love, kindness, and control, because silence in that moment is not emptiness. It is the sound of wisdom whispering, "Don't say what you later wish you hadn't." When you are planning, thinking, or making important decisions, silence becomes your greatest ally. The world around you is noisy, full of voices, opinions, distractions. and demands that pull your attention in every direction. Everyone has something to say, everyone has advice to give, and everyone believes they know what's best for you. But in the midst of all that noise, true clarity only comes from silence. When you step away from the chatter and allow yourself a moment of quiet, your thoughts begin to organize, your vision becomes clearer, and your intuition starts to speak. Silence is not just the absence of sound, it is the presence of focus. It's the sacred space where ideas are born and dreams begin to take shape. Great thinkers, inventors, and leaders have all understood this. That silence is not a void, but a workshop for the mind. When you sit in silence, you give your thoughts room to breathe. You allow your creativity to expand without interference. You begin to hear the quiet voice within you, the one that often gets drowned out by the noise of the world. When you are planning your next move or making an important choice, silence helps you connect with your deeper self. It helps you question your motives. Why am I doing this? What do I truly want? Is this path aligned with my values, or am I being influenced by others? In silence, you can see what your heart truly desires without the fog of pressure, fear, or ego. You can weigh your options carefully and see both the risks and rewards with a clear mind. Decisions made in silence are rarely regretted because they come from a place of calm awareness rather than impulsive reaction. Silence also gives you the ability to listen, not to others this time, but to your own intuition. That quiet inner voice that whispers when everything else is loud, that's your guide. But you can't hear it if you're constantly surrounded by noise, opinions, and distractions. When you step into silence, you begin to trust yourself more. You start realizing that you already have the answers within. You just needed the quiet to find them. There is a certain strength in being still when the world demands action. People may mistake your silence for indecision, but they don't realize that you are gathering your strength, collecting your thoughts, and building your strategy. Silence gives you time to observe, to see how others move, to understand the situation fully, and to plan your steps wisely. A well-timed silence can be more powerful than 1,000 rushed words. It allows you to move with purpose instead of pressure. In your moments of silence, you can reflect on your past choices and learn from them. You can see patterns in your behavior, understand your emotions, and recognize what truly matters to you. The answers that come in silence are often the ones that bring the most peace because they align with your truth. It's in those moments that you discover that silence is not loneliness, it's clarity, it's the mind's way of realigning with purpose. When you act after thinking in silence, your actions carry a deeper confidence. You no longer move out of confusion or fear, you move with direction. That's the power of stillness. It turns chaos into order, noise into focus, and uncertainty into wisdom. The quiet thinker often achieves more than the loud dreamer because their silence gives birth to strategy, and strategy leads to success. So when you are planning your next goal or deciding which path to take, seek silence. Step away from the noise of the world even for a few moments. Sit with yourself. Reflect. Think. Listen. Because silence is where your true power lies. The power to see clearly, to plan wisely, and to move forward with unshakable confidence. In silence, you don't lose direction, you find it. When you are being criticized unfairly, silence becomes your armor, your grace, and your quiet victory. There will always be moments in life when people misunderstand you, misjudge you, or talk about you behind your back. No matter how pure your intentions are, someone will twist your words, question your choices, or doubt your abilities. It's one of the hardest lessons to learn that not everyone will see your truth the way you do. In those moments, your instinct might push you to defend yourself, to explain, to shout, or to prove them wrong. But sometimes, the most powerful response is no response at all. Silence in the face of unfair criticism is not surrender, it is self-control, and it comes from deep confidence within. When you stay silent, you are not agreeing with your critics. You are simply refusing to give them the reaction they seek. People who attack others unfairly often do so to provoke a response, to gain attention, or to pull you into their negativity. The moment you argue or try to justify yourself, you give them power over your peace. But when you remain calm and silent, you take that power back. Your silence tells them without words, "You do not define me. Your opinion cannot shake who I am." That quiet confidence unsettles those who want to see you break. Silence in such situations is also a sign of emotional maturity. It shows that you have learned to separate truth from noise. You understand that not every accusation deserves an answer, and not every opinion deserves your energy. When people criticize you unfairly, their words say more about them than they do about you. Their judgment often comes from their own insecurity, jealousy, or misunderstanding. Responding only feeds the fire. Silence lets it burn out on its own. There is a saying, "Never wrestle with a pig." You both get dirty, but the pig enjoys it. When you stay silent in the face of unfair criticism, you rise above the dirt. You maintain your dignity. You let your actions, your consistency, and your truth speak for you. Time has a beautiful way of revealing what words cannot. Eventually, people see who you truly are. The truth always shines brighter than gossip or lies, and silence allows it the space to do so. But silence doesn't mean weakness. It takes incredible strength to hold your tongue when every part of you wants to defend yourself. It takes discipline to stay calm when your heart is hurt. That restraint comes from knowing that you don't need to prove your worth to anyone who refuses to see it. When you stay silent, you keep your energy focused on growth, not on battles that don't matter. You remind yourself that the opinions of others are temporary, but your peace of mind is priceless. There will be times when people misinterpret your silence, thinking you are afraid or guilty. Let them. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your peace. Your silence is not their victory, it's yours. Because in silence, you preserve your focus, your dignity, and your power. You learn to trust yourself more than the noise around you. You learn that sometimes truth doesn't need defending, it needs patience. With silence, you let your work speak louder than your words. You let your consistency prove what arguments never could. People eventually forget what was said, but they remember what they see: your integrity, your persistence, your calm. That's how silence defeats criticism. It turns their negativity into your motivation, their doubt into your drive, and their words into your stepping stones. So when you are criticized unfairly, don't rush to fight every rumor or justify every action. Be still, Stay silent. Let time reveal what truth cannot hide. Because silence in that moment is not emptiness, it is strength in its purest form. It is the calm assurance that no one's opinion can destroy what was built on truth. And that kind of silence, the silence of a strong and centered soul, always speaks louder than any defense ever could. When you are learning or observing, silence becomes your greatest teacher. It is in silence that knowledge settles deeply, that understanding grows roots, and that wisdom begins to bloom. The most intelligent minds are not those that talk the most, but those that listen, watch, and absorb. In silence, your mind opens, not to defend, not to argue, but to truly understand. You stop trying to impress others with what you know, and instead, you begin to expand what you know by being humble enough to learn. When you choose silence while learning, you give yourself the gift of focus. You begin to see the details others miss. You notice expressions, patterns, emotions, and unspoken truths that only quiet observation can reveal. Every teacher, every experience, every situation becomes a lesson. Silence turns life itself into a classroom, the people around you into teachers, and every failure into an opportunity to grow. But this only happens when you stop talking long enough to listen and observe. Silence teaches patience. It reminds you that understanding doesn't come instantly. In a noisy world, where everyone wants quick results and constant stimulation, silence allows you to slow down and process things deeply. It gives you the time to connect ideas, to reflect, and to make sense of what you're learning. You start realizing that wisdom is not just about collecting information, it's about digesting it, questioning it, and turning it into something meaningful. When you are silent, you also learn about people in ways words can't teach. You begin to read their tone, their eyes, their pauses, the things they don't say but deeply feel. You discover that silence is a language too, one that reveals truth far more than speech sometimes can. When you're truly observant, you see how people act when no one's watching, how they react under pressure, and how they treat those who can't benefit them. Silence gives you insight. It shows you the real world behind the noise. The greatest leaders, thinkers, and creators in history all had one thing in common. They valued silence. They understood that constant talking blocks creativity, while stillness invites it. In silence, ideas grow. In silence, imagination awakens. In silence, the mind becomes calm enough to hear the quiet voice of inspiration. That's why silence is so powerful for learning. It's not passive, it's active listening, active thinking, active understanding. Sometimes, when you're learning, silence also protects you from arrogance. When you speak too much, you stop listening. When you believe you already know everything, you stop growing. Silence humbles you. It reminds you that there's always more to learn, always something new to understand, and always someone who knows something you don't. It allows you to approach life with curiosity instead of judgment, with openness instead of pride. There's also a beautiful calmness that comes from being silent and observant. You no longer feel the need to prove your intelligence or constantly contribute to every discussion. You realize that learning is not about showing off what you know. It's about soaking in as much as you can. When you're quiet, people reveal more to you. Situations unfold more clearly. The truth, which often hides behind noise, becomes visible, and most importantly, silence during learning gives you self-awareness. You begin to notice your own thoughts, your emotions, your reactions. You start learning not just from the world, but about yourself. You see your strengths and weaknesses without judgment. You understand what inspires you, what distracts you, what challenges you. That's when learning becomes wisdom, when silence helps you listen not only to others, but to your own inner voice. So, when you're in a place of learning, whether in a classroom, a conversation, or in life itself, choose silence. Let your ears be open, your eyes attentive, and your mind curious. Because silence doesn't mean you're empty, it means you're ready to be filled. It doesn't mean you're slow, it means you're growing deeply. The quiet learner is often the wisest person in the room, not because they speak loudly, but because their silence allows them to see and understand what others miss. When peace means more than being right, silence becomes a reflection of true strength, wisdom, and love. There are times in life when you find yourself in the middle of an argument, a misunderstanding, or a situation where you know you are right, yet something inside you whispers, "Is proving it worth the peace you will lose?" That is the moment where maturity begins, when you choose silence, not because you have no words, but because you value harmony over victory. It takes far more strength to stay silent and keep your peace than to raise your voice and win an argument that leaves both hearts wounded. Being right feels good, it satisfies the ego, but peace feeds the soul. When you insist on always proving yourself, you may win the debate, but you often lose something far more valuable: respect, calm, or even relationships. Not every battle is worth fighting, and not every truth needs to be spoken at every moment. Silence in those situations doesn't mean you've lost. It means you have chosen something bigger than pride. It means you have learned that peace is not found in domination, but in understanding. There are moments when silence is the most powerful answer you can give. When people argue not to understand, but to be heard, your silence disarms them. It ends the cycle of noise and allows calmness to enter. Your stillness can make others reflect, because silence has a quiet authority that no amount of shouting can match. When you remain composed while others lose control, you remind them and yourself that peace is not something others can give or take from you. It is something you protect within yourself. Choosing peace over being right is not about weakness or fear. It's about wisdom, the wisdom to know that not every disagreement needs resolution, that sometimes people aren't ready to hear the truth, and that forcing your point only creates more resistance. Silence, in these moments, is a way of saying, "I choose my calm over chaos. I choose understanding over ego." That kind of silence comes from self-awareness, from knowing that your peace is your responsibility, not the world's. When you choose silence, you create space for reflection, both for yourself and for others. You allow emotions to cool, pride to fade, and perspective to return. Many conflicts resolve themselves in that space of quiet. When people realize that anger is temporary, but the hurt caused by words can linger forever, your silence can be the mirror that helps others see their own noise. It can transform tension into realization and resentment into respect. There's a kind of beauty in walking away from arguments with your dignity intact. You don't need to shout to be heard, and you don't need to prove your worth through words. People who truly know your heart won't need convincing, and those who are determined to misunderstand you won't believe you no matter how hard you try. Silence, then, becomes a way of trusting time, trusting that truth always reveals itself in the end without you having to force it. Sometimes, silence also protects love. In relationships, whether with family, friends, or partners, there are moments when you must choose what matters more, the issue or the bond. A single harsh word can create distance that silence could have prevented. Being silent doesn't mean you're ignoring the problem. It means you're choosing the right moment to address it with calm instead of chaos, with understanding instead of pride. Love grows in the soil of patience, and silence often provides that space for healing. Silence also teaches humility. It reminds you that being right is not the ultimate goal in life, being kind is. It's easy to win arguments. It's harder to win hearts. And in the end, what truly brings peace to your life is not being the loudest, but being the calmest. Silence gives you that grace, the grace to let go, to rise above, to be at peace even when others are not. So, when you find yourself at that crossroads, where you can either be right or be at peace, choose peace. Choose silence. Let it protect your heart, your energy, and your spirit. Because silence doesn't mean defeat, it means wisdom has spoken. The truth never needs to shout, it simply waits quietly for the right time to be seen. And that is the power of silence. It wins not by force, but by peace.